Oh, yeah. Everyone's real happy then.
Do I detect a note of sarcasm?
Are you kidding me? This baby is off the charts. Why?
Oh, a sarcasm detector. Oh, that's a really useful invention.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. And I see a lot of people out there, there's like a disagreement about the state of DC Comics. Whether it's, obviously I think that the state of the quality of the writing, for the most part, is in disarray. It's in disrepair. How about that word? I think there's some damn good art going on at DC Comics, but I think the stories for themselves aren't very good. And people will keep saying, well, what about all the sales? What sales are you talking about? Lunar Distribution, the company that distributes DC Comics, does not report sales data. The only sales data we have are guesses based on a severely limited number of stores that use that Comics Pro app thing that was developed down in New Zealand or whatever. There's an app that you could use as a store owner. It likely has lots of regional bias and whatnot in it, and they determine or try to determine a sales number based off a very limited number of sources. And I am not talking crap on Comic-Con or anybody about that. They're doing the best they can with the limited amount of information that they have. I find it impossible to believe that things are all good in the hood when it comes to DC Comics. There has been too much upheaval. There has been too many crazy things that have been happening at DC for everything to be good. And the fact that when they come out and they laud the sales of John Kent's Superman #5 or John Kent's Son of Kal-El #5, they just say unprecedented numbers. What the hell does that mean? Well, this issue sold more than issue #1. That's not surprising. You did a major publicity stunt. Essentially, every major news outlet in a lot of the world published that information and put that information out there. I'm not surprised people came in and bought that comic book. I am surprised that they aren't saying 400,000 orders on issue on the first and second prints of it. The demand for the comic was so overwhelming that we had to push it back 3 weeks just so we could meet the demand on the first and second print. We haven't heard that. We have seen some creators give some loose numbers. We certainly heard on issue 1, I don't remember if that came out after the return from the pandemic, that it was like 300,000. I will believe that because we're talking about Batman story, 3 Jokers. We've been hearing about that for years at that point. Jeff Johns, some fantastic art from Jason Fabon. We've heard some other creators, the number 130,000 issues shipped for a James Tynion Batman book. I kind of believe that one too. I think that was on the Punchline comic, maybe. It was on one of those ones where they kind of leaked the information there's going to be a new important character. So we're hearing some data every once in a while, but it's been quite a while since we've really been hearing all that stuff. And the reason that I cannot believe that DC Comics is in a better place today, sales-wise or just publishing-wise, as they were even 2 years ago, is you've had the two massive, what do they call it? Bloody Monday days, the two massive sets of firings, where basically you gutted the editorial staff, you gutted a lot of the executives that had a long-term interest and experience from the comic book industry. So you've lost all that experience. You've lost a lot of people that had capability. So your ability to handle as many books competently is severely diminished. Not only do you not have the executives that have been publishing comics for hundreds of years worth of experience lost out the door, your editorial staff got diminished, but you're expanding the number of titles that you're putting out, which I think is a direct reflection of the quality of the comic books that we're getting, which I think in a lot of cases are subpar in comparison to what DC Comics was putting out pre-pandemic. You know what I'm saying? Pre-Future State. Let's put it that way. We've also had some pretty major DC editors leave of their own volition. Certainly, Jamie Rich would have been one of the big names. There was another big name executive that was not fired. I think there are two of them actually that actually left on their own volition. That doesn't exactly inspire, faith or belief that everything is just hunky-dory at DC Comics. We've got other things that are happening within DC Comics that would give you or would lead you to believe that there might be some things going on behind the scenes that aren't quite as copacetic as DC Comics and the shill media would like you to believe. We've seen a lot of creators leave from DC Comics. Scott Snyder is still associated with DC Comics. Where is he writing his comic books right now? Comixology and Substack. We saw the lead writer of Batman, the flagship for the entire Western comic industry, basically say, I'm out the door. I do not want to keep writing Batman because I want this other, which is a nice offer from Substack. I've read some of the details on those grants that they're getting with the kind of the extra bennies that they're getting, at least for the first year or whatever it is. Is going to be hard to match that deal. But the prestige of writing Batman is certainly, it's alluring. James Tynion was like, I'm good. If everything was going great at DC Comics and he thought he was going to get the opportunities that he needed to expand his brand, because it's not like he didn't have best-selling or high-selling independent comics over at Image Comics with the Department of Truth. I think is still doing very well. And then Something Is Killing the Children, which is doing the gangbusters over at Boom Studios. Even got the sequel coming out pretty soon. It might have come out this week. And then, obviously, it sounds like that's been picked up for streaming. I think the Department of Truth might have already got picked up for something as well. He was getting to do some of his own creator-owned kind of publishing kind of stuff with Razor Blades. It's not like he wasn't getting opportunities outside of DC. He's working on the flagship character. He's getting some high sales over here, expanding his brand and his name. If DC was really great behind the scenes, I think it would be hard for a creator like James Tynion to just get up and leave. Does it seem like Jeff Johns is returning anytime soon? I know there's this Stargirl. Is it Stargirl? Might just be Star. Whatever it is. That series that we were all expecting to happen sometime soon. I think it's probably still on the docket. But hey, he and Jason Fabok contacted DC about creating a sequel to Batman 3 Jokers. Absolute runway hit. They made a ton of money off of that comic book, and they're going to continue to make money off of that comic book for decades to come. I will be shocked if that trade ever goes out of print. Well, ever is a long time, but for the next few decades, that one's going to be in print. Just the name alone, and let's not even talk about the quality of the artwork. I think the story could have been better. That's just me personally. But that book is going to stand the test of time because of the characters involved, the artwork involved. And DC are going to make a lot of money off of that. Hey, Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok approached DC about making a sequel. They never got back to him. Can you believe the money-making opportunity that DC just let slip through their fingers because they're either in disarray, they didn't realize the opportunity that was there, some type of ball was dropped, and you have them working on other projects now. Sounds like Jeff Johns is expanding his Mad Ghost imprint over at Image Comics. And I'll be surprised if we don't continue to see him do more stuff. We know that in that Geiger, like that super-sized, giant-sized Geiger comic book, he's going to be introducing a lot of new lore and history and new characters that I imagine we're going to be seeing in new comic books written by him and other people. We know that Peter J. Tomasi, another creator that's been long associated with DC Comics, and yes, he is coming back to do that Superman and Batman Super Sons kind of thing, and he's going to be doing some work here and there, but he's moving on too. Just think about the creators that moved on. Gary Frank. Sounds like Jason Fabok won't be working there anytime soon. Jeff Johns. Essentially, Scott Snyder, he's still associated with DC, but he ain't working there. James Tynion. These are a lot of big-name creators. We also have Brian Michael Bendis took his Jinx World over to Dark Horse. Now, whether that was a big loss or not, it's sad. Look, from everything I saw, the sales on that kind of sucked, but he still was a name, and he's moving on. Or at least they're planning on moving on. I don't think that you can lose this amount of executives, this amount of editors, this amount of creators, and for everything to be good. Then we also have the publicity stunts that they're doing. We know that DC has changed their model to adapt to the climate and the market that we're on, where it's, collectability is king, right? It's not really the story that's driving sales in a lot of cases. It's ratio variants, store exclusive variant covers. And I do not blame the comic book retailers for seeing the market for what it is and doing the best they can to make money on the product that's out there, even if it is substandard. That is not on them. They do not get to dictate how good DC Comics, the quality of their books are right now, or Marvel for that matter. Right now, there's a lot of speculators that have come in, and a lot of these covers are getting hot. So DC Comics have adjusted their model, just like the retailers have, to meet the demand that's there, and they're doing lots of ratio variants and whatnot. Something they did not do in the past, unless it was something special, like a milestone issue, like a number one issue, something like that. Now you're getting lots of different variant covers, ratio variants. You're getting a lot of store exclusive variants to kind of help make up, I think, for lack of interest in the current stories. And they're having to do publicity stunts, like we got the John Kent, bisexual reveal that's going to happen, by the end of the year in Superman Son of Kal number 5. Now, if they wanted this to be a nice, cool story that was a big surprise, they didn't have to put that information out there, but they had to because they needed to generate sales. You're seeing more stunt publicity and things like that. Obviously, I imagine we're going to continue to see more stuff like this in the future, because it's not the characters, it's not the stories that are bringing people in, because they've lost so many editors, they've lost so many creators. There's so many green as goose shit writers at DC Comics right now. You can't help but, I get it. I get why the stories aren't very good. That doesn't mean I'm going to accept it or not criticize it. But, they're having to supplement, good quality enthusiasm for stories with good quality enthusiasm for stunts and variant covers and whatnot. If DC Comics was in a good place right now, they wouldn't need to do that. They literally wouldn't. Remember when they did the death of Superman? Interest in Superman was going down, down, down. They needed to do something to generate interest in the character. So they went out and did a nice big publicity stuff. We see these crisis events. They tend to do those from time to time when there's less interest in the brand. We've seen wholesale relaunches of everything where they change all the characters. And it sounds like we've got another another crisis event looming in 2022. And let's not forget, within the space of 18 months, something like that, right? You got Joker War. We got Fear State, Shadows of the Bat, 3 Batman events. Does that sound like DC Comics of old to you? The confident DC Comics that knew they were putting out the best superhero stories possible? Or does that sound like the Marvel method to you, where they realize that there are insufficiencies in the product they're putting out, and they have to make up for that with increased ways of getting people's hopes up before they're inevitably let down by the lacking quality of the story? So when you hear this, everything's good at DC, everything's fine, DC can say whatever they want, they can have an interview with Daniel Cherry and Jim Lee, with everything's great. Yes, there have been some successes. It sounds like Batman Fortnite was an enormous success. And I'm sure this publicity stunt that they did with John Kent Superman seems to have been successful, but they're going to have to keep doing stuff like that to be successful, because they can no longer rely on the stories and the creators, because they're kind of abandoning the ship. They've left the building, and DC Comics is in a bad place. The idea that there's nothing to see here is just ludicrous. You can poke 50 holes in that story because none of it adds up. And that's just my opinion. So next time someone tells you, DC Comics is better than ever. Nah. You can see through it. There's no way. There's a lot of weird stuff going on there, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.